The story of jumping from space did not begin in one day. It started many years before the world ever heard about it. It began with a simple but dangerous idea. Can a human fall from the edge of space and survive? At first, this idea sounded almost impossible. Even the bravest pilots, astronauts, and scientists never imagined that one day a person would stand on the edge of Earth and then jump from it. But ideas have power, and sometimes one single idea changes everything. This story follows the people who dared to think differently. People who believed that the limits of the human body were far wider than what anyone thought. Scientists, engineers, and explorers came together to test something that had never been tested before. They wanted to see if a human could survive a fall from almost 40 kilometers above the Earth, so high that the sky turns black, the air disappears, and Earth looks like a giant spinning globe. The idea first came from a simple question. A researcher once asked, if an astronaut's spacecraft is damaged, can he jump safely to Earth? Astronauts depend on rockets, capsules, and complex machines. But what if something goes wrong? What if there is an emergency? If a person could jump from near space and survive, it would mean more hope, more safety, and more knowledge for future space missions. It would also show how strong and adaptable the human body truly is. But to understand how crazy this idea was, we need to understand the environment near space. At around 39 kilometers above the Earth, the world becomes completely different. The air becomes so thin that breathing without a proper suit is impossible. The temperature drops to deadly levels, far below freezing. And the pressure becomes so low that without a protective suit, a human body cannot survive even a few seconds. Standing at the edge of space is not like standing on a mountain or flying in an airplane. It is like standing between life and death, between Earth and the unknown. It is the point where the blue sky ends and the black emptiness of space begins. At this height, the Earth's curve becomes visible, showing the viewer how small and fragile our planet really is. This is where the idea of a space jump becomes both beautiful and terrifying. Scientists who studied the human body at high altitudes knew that even in airplanes, pilots faced serious problems when the pressure dropped. They used special pressure suits to stay alive. But a jump from near space, that needed a suit far stronger than anything used by normal pilots. It needed a suit almost like the one astronauts wear in space. And building such a suit was not easy. Engineers started working on a design that could protect a person from all the dangers at high altitude. The suit had to keep the body warm, even in freezing temperatures. It had to provide oxygen, even when there was almost no air. It had to maintain pressure around the body to stop blood from boiling in the thin atmosphere. And it had to be flexible enough for a person to move, stand, jump, and control their fall. The team also needed a way to bring the jumper to that height. Airplanes cannot fly that high. Helicopters cannot fly that high. Rockets are too dangerous for this type of mission. So they decided to use a massive helium balloon, one of the largest balloons ever built for a human mission. This balloon would slowly rise into the sky, lifting a small capsule and the jumper all the way to the stratosphere. This idea of using a giant balloon was smart, but it was also risky. The balloon was as thin as plastic wrap and bigger than a football stadium when fully expanded. It was designed to float into the stratosphere where the air is extremely thin. A small tear, a small mistake, or a sudden gust of wind could destroy the balloon. That is why the team practiced again and again, checking every connection, every valve, every measurement. They knew that at this height, even a tiny error could lead to death. As the project developed, more experts joined the team. Aerospace engineers, medical doctors, pressure suit designers, weather scientists, and camera specialists all came together. Everyone had an important role. Some studied how the human body behaves when falling at extreme speeds. Others studied wind patterns at high altitude. Some tested parachutes, while others built the capsule that would carry the jumper into the sky. The team spent years testing equipment. They tested the pressure suit in special vacuum chambers. They tested parachutes in wind tunnels. They tested the capsule in different weather conditions. Every test revealed something new. Sometimes equipment failed. Sometimes sensors did not work. Sometimes the suit needed changes, but every failure made the team stronger. Every mistake brought them closer to success. Meanwhile, the man who would actually make the jump had to prepare his body and mind. Standing on the edge of space is not normal. Falling from that height at supersonic speeds is not normal, so the jumper trained like a real astronaut. He learned how to control his breathing. He learned how to stay calm under pressure. He learned how to keep his body stable during free fall. This training was not only physical, it was mental and emotional. During training, he practiced simulations of every possible danger. What if the suit failed? What if oxygen ran out? What if he started spinning too fast? What if he lost control of his body? Each problem had a plan. Each danger had a solution. The team did not want surprises on the day of the jump. The idea of spinning was one of the biggest fears. When a body falls from very high altitude, there is no air to push against. So if the jumper starts spinning, he may spin faster and faster until he loses consciousness. Scientists studied how the human body behaves in such situations. They used computers, test dummies, and controlled experiments. They tried to understand how to keep the body stable in such thin air. Another major danger was speed. The jumper would fall faster than anyone had ever fallen before. He would break the sound barrier with only his body. No airplane, no rocket, just a human body falling through the air. Breaking the sound barrier means moving faster than the speed at which sound waves travel. It creates intense pressure on the suit, the body, and the equipment. If the suit could not handle that pressure, everything would end instantly. Despite all these dangers, the team continued. They believed this mission was important, not only for science, but for understanding human limits. They wanted to show the world that human courage, combined with science, would achieve something extraordinary. As the project moved forward, the world began to hear whispers about the mission. People became curious. Is it really possible? They asked. Can a human really jump from space? Some doubted it, some thought it was madness, but others felt inspired. They saw it as a sign of hope, that humans could still push boundaries, still explore, still dream big. The team working on the mission did not focus on fame or attention. They focused on safety, precision, and truth. They wanted to prove something real, not just to the world, but to themselves. They wanted to show that human beings are capable of more than anyone believes. The idea of jumping from space is more than just a stunt. It is a test of science, a test of engineering, and a test of human spirit. It is a reminder that exploration never stops. That humans always look upward, toward the sky, toward the stars, toward the unknown. And now, as the mission gets closer, the story becomes more intense. The jumper stands ready, the capsule is ready, the balloon is ready. The world watches as the team prepares to send one human into the highest skies a person has ever climbed without a rocket. The idea that started with a simple question has become something far greater. It has become a journey into the edge of space, a journey into danger, a journey into human courage. Part 1 ends here, with the idea born, the team assembled, and the mission standing on the edge of possibility. The world waits to see what happens next. Preparation for a space jump is not like preparing for a normal mission. It is not like preparing a rocket, not like preparing an airplane flight, and not like preparing for skydiving. It is something far more complex, something that tests the limits of human technology and human courage at the same time. As the idea turned into a real project, the team entered the most difficult stage, preparation. Every person on the mission knew that one single mistake, one loose wire, one broken seal, one wrong calculation could lead to disaster. So they moved slowly, carefully, step by step, as if they were building a spacecraft for deep space. The jumper, the engineers, the doctors, and the scientists all came together in a large hangar filled with machines, wires, tools, screens, and long checklists. Each morning, before the sun rose, the team gathered to plan the day. They reviewed weather reports, pressure suit requirements, altitude predictions, balloon behavior models, and hundreds of safety protocols. Nothing was left to chance. The first major challenge was the pressure suit, a suit that could keep a human alive in almost space conditions. Unlike the suits worn by normal skydivers, this suit had to handle extreme environments near vacuum pressure, Extremely low temperatures, lack of oxygen, risk of boiling blood, due to low pressure, risk of freezing muscles, risk of unconsciousness. The suit was similar to what astronauts wear on space missions, but it had to be even more flexible because the jumper needed to move, step out of the capsule, and control his fall. Engineers spent months perfecting every part of the suit. They studied old spacesuit designs, new materials, and pressure system technologies. Some nights, they worked until midnight, adjusting tiny screws and valves that would operate thousands of meters above Earth. Inside the suit were layers of technology. One layer provided insulation, another kept pressure around the body, and another circulated oxygen. Small heaters were placed in the gloves to prevent the jumper's fingers from freezing. A communication system was built into the helmet so the jumper could speak to the mission team even at the highest altitude. Every cable, every switch, every valve had to work perfectly. The suit was then tested in a vacuum chamber, a giant metal room where scientists could remove air to simulate high altitude. The jumper stepped inside wearing the suit and the chamber door closed behind him. Slowly, the pressure dropped. The temperature fell. The air thinned. Inside the chamber, the jumper could hear his own breathing, slow, loud, deep. Every breath reminded him of where he would soon be, almost at the edge of space. Engineers watched from outside, ready to stop the test if anything went wrong. The suit held strong. The oxygen system worked perfectly, but there were still many tests left. Next came the capsule, the small, lightweight container that would carry the jumper to the stratosphere. The capsule was not big. It had just enough room for one person to stand, sit, breathe, and prepare for the jump. But inside, it held advanced systems. Communications equipment, temperature, controls, pressure monitors, cameras, emergency gear. The walls were thin to keep the capsule light. The windows were strong enough to handle pressure changes. Every part of the capsule had to survive low air pressure, freezing temperatures, and powerful ultraviolet radiation from the sun. But the capsule itself could not rise into the sky on its own. For that, the team needed the biggest challenge yet, the massive helium balloon. This balloon was unlike anything used in normal weather missions. When fully expanded in the stratosphere, it would be wider than a skyscraper is tall. But on the ground before launch, the balloon was thin, delicate, almost like clear plastic. A single tear could ruin the entire mission. So the team created a special landing zone, flat, wide, quiet, and free of sharp objects for balloon testing. They rehearsed the launch again and again. Workers walked slowly around the balloon fabric. They wore soft shoes to avoid punctures. They used gloves to prevent damage from fingernails. Every movement around the balloon was careful and controlled. Meanwhile, doctors and medical experts worked with the jumper. Even though he was trained and experienced, this mission was on a completely different level. Doctors checked his heart rhythm, lungs, blood pressure, and reaction time. They studied how the body behaves in low-pressure environments. They explained how blood vessels might react during freefall. They practiced emergency breathing procedures inside the pressure suit. They even tested what would happen if the jumper lost consciousness during the fall. The medical team knew the risks. They knew the jumper could experience extreme spinning, sudden acceleration, rapid pressure changes, oxygen loss, temperature shock. The doctors trained him to stay calm no matter what happened. They taught him how to breathe under stress, how to slow his heartbeat, and how to think clearly in dangerous situations. But the jumper also needed mental training. This mission required more than physical strength. It required a calm mind, a mind strong enough to face fear at the edge of space. So the jumper spent hours each week practicing focus and silence. He sat alone in quiet rooms, visualizing the jump, the capsule rising, the Earth getting smaller, the sky turning black the moment he would step out. Visualization was powerful. The jumper trained his brain to imagine every danger, every movement, every second of the fall. He practiced overcoming fear through thought alone. But even with all this training, there was one thing that no one could fully prepare for: the freefall itself. In the thin air of the stratosphere, a human body does not fall the same way it does closer to Earth. There is almost no air resistance at the start. This means the body can spin uncontrollably. There is nothing to slow the fall. The jumper cannot feel the fall until he reaches thicker air. Speed builds rapidly, far faster than normal skydiving. The engineers were most worried about spinning. Spinning at high speed could cause the brain to shut down. It could make the jumper lose control, lose consciousness, or even break bones. So they created special training for body control. The jumper practiced spreading arms and legs at the right angle. He practiced adjusting his body position to stop rotation. He practiced falling from different points in the training tower. Even swimming was used as a technique, because controlling movement in water is similar to controlling movement in thin air. Every day, the jumper grew more confident. Every day, the training made him stronger mentally and physically. But confidence alone was not enough. The team needed real proof that the systems worked. So they created full-scale rehearsals, practice missions from lower altitudes. The jumper wore the full suit, entered the capsule, and performed every step exactly as he would on the real mission. The capsule was lifted into the air, far lower than the final height but high enough to test systems. The jumper stepped out and fell, using the same techniques he would use on the big day. Each test taught the team something new. Sometimes the radios failed. Sometimes sensors gave wrong readings. Sometimes temperature controls had small problems, but each problem was fixed. Each issue made the final mission safer. As training continued, excitement grew around the world. More people learned about the mission. More people watched updates, photos, interviews, and short videos. Everyone felt the same mixture of fear and excitement. A jump from space seemed both impossible and beautiful. People waited to see what would happen. At the mission base, the team made one final test, the full weather simulation. This test predicted how the Stratosphere balloon would behave on launch day. Scientists studied wind speeds at different altitudes, temperature layers in the atmosphere, and the path of the balloon. They used computer models to see how long the climb would take and how stable the capsule would be during the ascent. The results looked good. The balloon would rise smoothly. The capsule would stay stable. The jumper would reach the planned height. Everything was ready. The suit was ready. The capsule was ready. The parachutes were ready. The medical team, the engineers, the mission control, everyone was ready. Now only one thing remained, the day of the jump. And as the sun rose on that morning, the jumper stepped toward the capsule, fully suited, fully trained, fully aware of the risks. But no one knew what would truly happen once he reached the edge of space. No one knew if the thin air would allow him to control his fall. No one knew if he would survive breaking the sound barrier. No one knew if the parachute would open at the right moment. No one knew what waited for him at 39 kilometers above Earth. And as he placed his hand on the capsule door, a sudden problem appeared on the mission control screens, something no one expected. The mission morning arrived with cold air and a quiet sky. It was the kind of morning when the world felt still, as if it was waiting for something historic to happen. In the mission hangar, engineers and scientists moved quickly but carefully. Every step they took, every word they spoke carried the weight of years of preparation. The jumper stood in his full pressure suit, feeling the heavy gloves, the tight helmet, and the deep sound of his own breathing inside the mask. He had trained for this moment for many years, but now it felt real in a completely different way. He was not nervous, he was focused. His mind was sharp, silent, ready. Mission control was filled with glowing screens, blinking lights, and dozens of experts watching every number and signal. But then something unexpected appeared, a small warning on one of the screens. It was a minor pressure fluctuation from the capsule, a tiny one, so tiny that most missions would ignore it. But this was not most missions. This was the space jump. Engineers crowded around the screen, their voices dropped. Everyone knew the rule: no warning is too small. The jumper waited quietly as the team checked the capsule's pressure system. He did not complain. He did not ask for details. He trusted the team. For minutes, the hangar felt tense. Then finally, the lead engineer smiled, nodded, and said, "We fixed it. Safe to continue." Relief spread across the room, but the tension never fully left. The jumper walked with two support crew members toward the launch field. The giant helium balloon lay across the ground like a silver river, long and soft, stretching far across the airfield. Workers moved slowly around it, lifting the thin material with gentle hands. The sun had now risen, painting the sky with orange light. The balloon shimmered when sunlight touched it. It looked almost unreal, like something from another world. The capsule stood ready, connected to cables and surrounded by technicians making last-minute checks. Its white structure reflected the sunrise, making it glow faintly. The jumper climbed inside the capsule. The door was sealed. Inside, the jumper felt like he had entered another world, cold, quiet, filled with soft humming sounds from the life support systems. He looked through the small window and saw the crew waving. He lifted his hand, knowing it might be the last time he saw the world from the ground. Mission Control began the countdown to balloon inflation. The giant helium tank hissed as gas flowed into the balloon. Slowly, the balloon rose, lifting the capsule with gentle force. The jumper felt the capsule shake slightly. He held onto the handles, breathing deep, steady breaths. Capsule rising, Mission Control announced. The balloon pulled upward and the capsule left the ground. The jumper was now officially on his way to the edge of space. The first few kilometers of the ascent were smooth. The ground became smaller, cars became dots, people became specks, and buildings blended into wide shapes. Clouds floated below like soft, slow-moving islands. Inside the capsule, the jumper checked his suit pressure, oxygen levels, and communication link. Everything was perfect, but then something strange happened. At around 10 kilometers high, the capsule entered a thin layer of clouds. For a moment, everything outside the window turned white. The jumper could see nothing, not the sky, not the balloon, not the ground, just white fog. He closed his eyes, steadying his breathing. He remembered the training, trust the instruments, not your eyes. Moments later, the capsule broke through the cloud tops, and suddenly the world looked completely different. Above the clouds, the sky was already darker, leaning toward deep blue. The sunlight was stronger, sharper. The land below looked distant, like a map on a table. The jumper felt small, but also powerful. He was rising to a place very few humans had ever reached. Mission Control's voice came through his headset. Everything is stable. Balloon climbing smoothly. At 20 kilometers, the sky grew darker. The horizon curved slightly. The air pressure dropped so low that the suit systems began working harder. The jumper checked his wrists, where small digital screens displayed real-time data. All systems were normal. But the silence was unlike anything he had ever heard. Even his breathing felt louder than the world outside. He looked at the balloon through another window. It had expanded massively. At ground level, it looked like a deflated sheet. Up here, it stretched wide like a ghostly giant floating in the thin atmosphere. He thought to himself, "This balloon is the only thing holding me between life and the empty sky." At 28 kilometers, Earth's curve became clearer. The brown lands, blue lakes, and distant mountains looked like brush strokes on a canvas. The sky above had turned nearly black. Not dark blue-black, the edge of space. The jumper felt something he could not describe. It was not fear. It was not excitement. It was something between awe and disbelief. He was still rising. Mission Control spoke again. "You're approaching the stratosphere's boundary. Prepare for final systems check." The jumper nodded, though no one could see him. He ran through every checklist item. Helmet seal secure. Oxygen flow stable. Heating system active. Pressure suit fully inflated. Communication clear, heart rate rising but steady. "Everything looks good," he said calmly. At 32 kilometers, the capsule rocked gently as winds shifted. The balloon stretched even larger. The jumper felt the capsule shake, and for a moment he thought it might spin, but then it stabilized. Outside, the world looked both peaceful and dangerous. A sea of clouds covered some areas. Deserts stretched endlessly in others. The line between Earth and space was now clear, a soft, glowing blue ribbon wrapping the planet. The jumper stared at that line. That thin layer of atmosphere was the only thing protecting all life on Earth from the vacuum of space. Seeing it from this height made him realize how fragile everything on Earth truly was. At 36 kilometers, the capsule finally slowed. The balloon had reached near full expansion. The sky outside was fully black now, no stars, just darkness. The sun was bright, harsh, and white. The curvature of Earth was sharp, visible, undeniable. Mission Control spoke with excitement in their voices. "You're almost at jump altitude. Stand by." The jumper gripped the handles tightly. His breath echoed inside the helmet. He felt heavy, then light, then heavy again as the capsule adjusted its position. At 38 kilometers, the capsule reached the planned altitude. This was the edge of space, where the air was nearly gone, where temperature dropped to deadly levels, where the human body was never meant to be. The jumper felt a strange calm. He had trained for this exact moment for years. And yet, nothing could fully prepare him for the view outside the window. Earth, curved, bright, huge, and alone in the endless darkness. Mission Control announced, capsule stable, preparing for door release. The jumper's heart beat faster. This was it. This was the moment. The capsule door lock released with a loud click that echoed inside the small cabin. Cold air rushed in through tiny gaps. The jumper turned slowly, his suit making soft creaking sounds. He reached for the door handle. Mission Control spoke, "You are go for the jump." He pulled the door open. A blinding light flooded the capsule. The world outside was silent, empty, breathtaking. The jumper stepped forward, placing one foot on the edge of the capsule. Nothing separated him from the 39-kilometer drop below. Not a platform, not a rail, nothing. Just earth far, far below. He looked down. He looked at the black sky. He looked at the curve of Earth. Then Mission Control said something that froze him completely. "Wait, we see a rapid temperature drop on your left leg sensor. Something is wrong with the suit." The jumper stopped breathing for a second. A suit failure at this altitude meant only one thing: death. He looked down at his leg and saw frost forming on the fabric, and then the frost on the jumper's left leg spread slowly like tiny white crystals crawling across the suit. At first, it looked harmless, quiet, small, but everyone in Mission Control understood the truth. Frost at this height was not a small problem. Frost meant the temperature system inside the suit was struggling. Frost meant the suit might fail. And at 39 kilometers above the Earth, a failing suit meant almost certain death. The jumper stared at the frost for a moment, surprised then calm. His training told him not to panic. His breathing stayed deep and slow. He touched the small sensor panel on his suit wrist. Temperature reading falling fast. Mission Control's voice cracked through the headset. "Stay calm. We are checking the systems. Do not jump until we confirm safety." The jumper nodded, but he was still standing on the very edge of the capsule. 1 foot outside, 1 foot inside. The planet far below. The black sky behind him. The balloon floating silently above. He was suspended between two worlds, Earth and space, and now he could not move. Inside Mission Control, the room filled with tension. Engineers typed rapidly, checking every part of the suit's data. Doctors watched the jumper's heart rate rising. A temperature failure could freeze his leg, slow blood flow, or cause the pressure layer to crack. Any of those things would end the mission instantly. The lead engineer finally spoke. "It's the external layer, not the pressure layer. He's safe." Another voice added quickly, "But only for a short time. If the frost spreads, it can damage the pressure layer." The Mission Control commander took a deep breath and said, "Jumper, you have limited time. If you wait too long, the suit may freeze. You must decide, jump now or abort." The jumper closed his eyes for 1 second. He remembered the years of training, the tests, the failures, the hopes, the idea that started all of this. He opened his eyes and looked at the Earth below him, bright, curved, alive. "I'm jumping," he said into the microphone. His voice was steady, calm, sure. Mission Control paused. It was only a moment, but it felt like the entire world held its breath. "Copy, you are cleared to jump." The jumper placed both feet on the capsule's edge. The suit creaked softly. The wind was silent. There was no sound at this altitude, just the deep beating of his own heart inside his helmet. He looked down at the planet. Cities, mountains, deserts, oceans, all silent, all distant. The Earth looked like a giant marble floating in darkness. He leaned forward and then he stepped off. For one moment he did not fall. He floated, hanging between space and Earth, like a tiny dot against the infinite sky. Then gravity pulled him down. The fall began. At first he felt almost nothing. There was no air, no pressure, no wind pushing against him. It was like falling through emptiness. His arms spread out, his legs positioned just as he trained, but the silence was unnerving. There was no feeling of movement, just black sky above, curved Earth below. Then very slowly the world began to move. The Earth started pulling him faster. His speed increased. His body dropped through the thin air like a tiny stone in a huge, invisible ocean. Mission Control monitored him closely. His speed rose rapidly, 300 km/h, 400 km/h, 600 km/h. The jumper still felt calm. He adjusted his arms. He kept his breathing steady, but then something happened, the feared spinning. A small tilt in his right arm caused his body to twist. At high altitudes, a small mistake becomes a big one. His spin began slowly at first, then faster, then even faster. The earth below started swirling. The sky above twisted like a spiral. His body turned again and again. He tried to correct his position. Arms out, legs balanced, but the thin air offered almost no support. Inside the helmet, warnings flashed. Rotation warning, stabilize immediately. His breathing grew sharp. His heartbeat accelerated. His vision shook violently. Mission Control shouted, "You are spinning, maintain posture, correct posture." But he could barely hear them. The spinning forced blood to move away from his brain. Colors faded. Shapes blurred. The earth looked like a painted circle smearing across a canvas. He forced his arms into the correct position. He fought the rotation with every muscle he had. Slow, steady, stronger, the spin began to slow. His vision cleared. His breathing returned to a rhythm. Finally, after a long, terrifying minute, the spinning stopped. Mission Control cheered loudly. But the jumper had no time to celebrate. His speed continued increasing. 900 km/h, 1000 km/h, 1100 km/h. He was dropping faster than any human in history. And then he broke the sound barrier. A sudden shockwave burst around his body. The air compressed violently. But because the air was thin, there was no loud boom. Just a strange jolt that traveled through his suit. Inside his helmet, a tiny indicator turned red. Speed of sound exceeded his body, kept falling. Fast, faster, even faster. For a moment he could feel nothing at all. No weight, no pull, just the strange sensation of moving beyond human limits. Mission Control watched his altitude drop rapidly. They knew the next stage was the most dangerous, entering thicker air. As he fell lower, air molecules increased, pressure increased, resistance increased. The fall transformed. The jumper suddenly felt the wind hitting him like invisible hands. The suit vibrated, his arms shook. The pressure around him shifted. Now the air felt real. Now the fall felt real. His temperature sensors stabilized. The frost on his leg began melting as he entered warmer layers. But he had another challenge. He had to decide when to deploy his parachute. Too early and the chute could tear. Too late and he might hit the ground at deadly speed. Mission Control spoke. "Prepare for parachute zone. Stand by." The jumper looked at his altitude readings. He checked his body position. His heartbeat grew faster, not from fear but from intense focus. Altitude dropping fast, 14 km, 12 km, 10 km. The parachute handle waited near his right hand. He moved his fingers toward it. Mission Control said, "You are approaching safe deployment range. Wait for our signal." But before they could give the signal, something unexpected happened. A sudden gust of high-altitude wind slammed into the jumper from the side. His body spun again, but this time uncontrollably. The spin was more violent than before. He felt his stomach twist. His vision blurred instantly. Altitude warnings beeped loudly. Pressure warnings flashed. Heart rate warnings activated. Mission Control shouted his name again and again, but he could not hear them clearly. The chute handle spun away from his hand. His arm shook violently. He tried to reach for it again, but the spin was too strong. The earth beneath him grew larger, closer, dangerously close. He had only seconds left to stop the spin and deploy the parachute, but before he could grab the handle, the suit's emergency system triggered a new warning. Pressure drop detected, right arm seal compromised. A pressure leak. At 10 kilometers above the earth, one leak was enough to end everything. His vision flickered. His suit tightened. The wind roared around him, and then the parachute system failed to arm. The emergency lights inside the jumper's helmet flashed red again and again. The words "pressure drop" blinked in sharp, bright letters. The warning tone, a beeping alarm, echoed inside his helmet like a heartbeat. He knew exactly what it meant. A pressure leak was one of the worst things that could happen during a near-space fall. At 10 kilometers above the earth, the air was still thin, still dangerous, still cold. Even a small leak could collapse the suit's pressure system. If the suit collapsed, the blood inside the body could boil, the brain could shut down, the lungs could freeze. He took a deep breath. Stay calm, he reminded himself. His voice inside the helmet shook slightly, but he forced himself to remain steady. He checked the suit's wrist display. The pressure loss was slow but increasing. The spin had slowed a little, but not enough. His right arm felt stiff. The wind pressure pushed against him like invisible waves. He tried again to reach the parachute handle, but his arm would not fully extend. Mission Control's voices crackled through the headset, sounding far away. "You have a seal compromise. You must deploy the parachute now." Their voices grew louder, desperate. They knew the danger even more than he did, but the spin continued to pull his arm off course. The parachute handle moved just beyond his reach. His fingers brushed it once, but he missed. He tried again. Each time the spin dragged his hand away. The earth below grew closer, not close enough to see buildings, but close enough to see shapes, ridges, rivers, shadows, close enough to understand that time was running out. His altitude dropped, 9 km, 8, 5 km, 8 km. Mission Control yelled into the microphone. "You are in the danger zone. Deploy now, deploy now." But the suit refused to settle. His right arm refused to move the way he needed. He took a deep breath, concentrated every bit of strength left in him, and reached again. This time he succeeded. His fingertips caught the edge of the parachute handle. He curled his fingers around it. He pulled with all his strength. The parachute deployed. A violent jerk tore through his body. His legs shook. His vision blurred. The harness dug into his suit like metal claws. The world stopped spinning and snapped into focus. And suddenly the wind slowed, the fall slowed. The earth no longer rushed toward him like a giant wall. He was safe, or so he thought. Mission Control cheered in the background. "We have chute deployment, we have chute, stabilizing." The jumper breathed the deepest breath of his life. The parachute above him stretched wide and bright against the sky. He felt the pressure inside his suit stabilize. The leak warning faded. The temperature warning disappeared. For the first time since the leap, he felt a strange moment of peace. He looked around him. The clouds floated like white mountains. The earth spread out below like a giant painting. The wind whispered softly around him. He had done it. He had survived the fall from space. He had survived the spin. He had survived breaking the sound barrier. He had survived the pressure leak. Now he only needed one thing, a safe landing. The parachute carried him gently through the sky. He adjusted his body angle just as he trained. He watched the ground grow larger, more detailed. A desert stretched under him, empty, flat, safe. Mission Control guided him. "Wind speed is good. Stay on your line, you're doing great." He nodded, even though they could not see him. He checked the suit systems again. All green now, all stable, all calm. He felt the air becoming warmer as he descended. He felt the suit relax slightly. He felt Earth calling him back. He lowered through the final cloud layer, the parachute swaying slightly in the soft breeze. The desert sand came into view, small rocks, dry bushes, a flat landing zone, almost there. But just as he prepared for landing, just as he positioned his legs, something unexpected caught his eye. A dark shadow on the ground. It moved fast, it slid across the sand, it grew larger like a wave of wind. At first he thought it was nothing, maybe a cloud, maybe a trick of light, but then it happened. A sudden burst of wind hit him from the side, a strong gust, stronger than anything predicted. The parachute jerked violently. His body twisted. His legs swung sideways. He lost control of his direction. Mission Control shouted in panic, "Crosswind, crosswind, correct your position." He tried. He pulled the right handle. The parachute resisted. He twisted the other handle. The wind pushed harder. He was no longer moving toward the safe landing zone. He was drifting sideways toward a rocky field, sharp rocks, hard ground, dangerous terrain. Mission Control shouted again, "You need to correct now, hard right, hard right." He pulled the steering toggle with all his strength. The parachute shifted slightly, but the wind was stronger. Altitude dropped fast, 200 meters, 150 meters, 100 meters. The rocks grew clearer, sharper, more dangerous. His heart pounded, his breath shook. He pulled again, but the parachute tilted the wrong way. Mission Control shouted one last time, "You're about to land in the rocks. Brace for impact." He closed his eyes as the ground rushed toward him, but just before he hit, he saw something he could not understand. A small metal object lying on the ground. Half buried, shiny, round, reflecting light. It looked like a part of a spacecraft, but there was no spacecraft in the mission area. No satellites, no debris expected. Nothing should be there. The parachute dragged him forward. His boots hit the ground hard. He tumbled across the sand, rolling again and again. Everything went silent. Dust covered his visor. His suit lay still. And the strange metal object, that impossible object, lay only a few steps away from him. His radio crackled. "Jumper, are you okay? Do you copy? Do you copy?" He slowly lifted his head. His body ached. His heart pounded, and then the metal object started blinking. A small light, blue, pulsing, alive. The jumper froze. This mission was supposed to be about a fall from space. But now it had become something else. Something unexpected. Something unknown. He reached out his hand toward the object, and the blinking light suddenly turned bright white. To be continued.